Hey guys, tonight we follow a goddess into the marshlands. It's misty, the kind of mist that clings to your lashes and curls around your ankles like a damp cat. You step carefully, the ground soft and spongy underfoot, reeds taller than you whispering secrets in a language only old gods remember. There's a sound. Barely a sound, really. Just wind threading through the hollow stalks, creating a high, breathy note that fades as quickly as it comes. But it catches her attention. Athena. Yes, that Athena. Goddess of war, wisdom, crafts, strategy, and the sort of judgmental silences that could stop a Spartan in his tracks. She's not exactly in her element here. No gleaming armor, no columns, no scrolls or battle cries, just the bog, the wind, and those curious reeds, humming like they've got something to say. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And if you're tuning in from somewhere interesting, or even just your couch, drop your location and the time in the comments. I love seeing where you're all drifting off from. Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. Athena pauses. You pause with her, 1 foot half sunk in mud. She leans closer to the reeds, sharp gray eyes narrowing, as if trying to catch the tune mid-note. The sound is beautiful, yes, but there's something else, a hollowness, a loneliness in it that matches the way Olympus has felt lately. Tense, competitive, exhausting. She's had enough of the endless squabbling between gods, the posturing, the golden chariot screeching across the sky just to prove a point. She's even tired of mortals asking for clever plans to get out of stupid decisions. Sometimes she just wants quiet. And yet, here she is, stalking reeds like a cat watching a bird. Something about this wind-borne sound fascinates her. It's not like the harsh clash of bronze shields or the pompous roar of divine fanfare. It's delicate, personal. You can feel your own breath align with it, soft and even. Here's the first mainstream fact for the night. In ancient mythology, Athena really did invent the flute. It's not some fringe tale. It appears in several classical sources, though always with a twist. And the twist? Well, you're about to see it unfold. Athena kneels now, her knees pressing into damp moss. She doesn't flinch. The reeds around her sway like dancers, and she picks 2 of the straightest, longest stalks. Her hands are deft, the kind of hands that can weave battle strategies into embroidery and read centuries of knowledge from a single glance. She snaps the reeds. Hatsui cuts them cleanly with a knife she probably forged herself. Hollow, yes, but not empty. She presses one to her lips and blows. It sounds terrible. You'd wince, but Athena doesn't. She simply raises an eyebrow and adjusts the angle. Blows again, this time a wavering note. Pitiful, but alive. Floats up and vanishes into the mist. Let's be honest. The goddess of wisdom doesn't do failure well, but she doesn't give up either. She tweaks the shape, experiments with holes along the shaft. Her breath grows steadier, the notes a little clearer. You're not exactly hearing a symphony, but something about it tugs at your chest, like a memory you can't quite grab. And here's your first quirky tidbit. Some fringe versions of the myth claim the reeds Athena used were the reincarnated form of a nymph named Syrinx. Yes, the same one that would later be associated with Pan's pipes. Makes you wonder if the poor girl just kept getting turned into wind instruments by overly emotional gods. Athena doesn't care about legends. She's too focused. The tune she's crafting is part experimentation, part meditation. For the first time in centuries, millennia, she's not strategizing, she's creating. And that's when you notice it, the shift. Not in her face. No, her expression remains the same, cool neutrality. But something in the marsh around you changes. The wind stops playing randomly. It starts listening, following, harmonizing, like the world itself is leaning in, intrigued. Athena stands, her newly carved flute held gently in both hands, not as a weapon, not as a symbol, but as something new, soft, vulnerable, strange. You take a breath with her. She plays. The note is clearer now, stretched out like silk over stone. The reeds around you fall silent. The marsh hushes, holding its breath. Even frogs, those loud-mouthed marsh comedians, shut up. It's not music, not yet, but it's something, a beginning. And beginnings are dangerous, especially for immortals. They suggest change. And change, well, that's a 4-letter word in most divine languages. Still, Athena smiles. Barely, but enough for you to see it. Then the wind shifts again, carries the tune away, and somewhere, far off, but unmistakably real, you hear the first snort of laughter. Not mortal, divine. A snide chuckle echoing from a mountaintop. Someone's watching, someone's judging. And Athena? She doesn't flinch. Not yet. You follow Athena away from the marsh, the half-gone tune still humming in your ears like a splinter you can't reach. She tucks the flute into her robe, nearly invisible beneath the folds. Typical Athena, really. Never show your hand too soon. Back on Olympus, the air is thinner, brighter, too bright, in fact. You squint as you step onto the marble courtyard where gods sprawl in their usual dramatic poses. Dionysus draped across a leopard skin couch, cup in hand, Hermes pacing like he's got somewhere better to be. He does. Ares sharpening a blade that hasn't seen battle in a decade, but still looks like he's preparing for prom night at a murder academy. Athena glides past them all without a word. They barely notice. Why would they? She's always working, always judging, always the sober one in a room full of drama addicts. But today she isn't working. She's carrying a secret, a reed-shaped, breath-powered secret she doesn't entirely understand yet. And as with all secrets on Olympus, it won't stay one for long. Let's anchor tonight with a known historical fact. In ancient Greek culture, flutes, particularly the double aulos, were often associated with Dionysian rituals and ecstatic worship, wild dances, frenzies, masks, which, if you think about it, couldn't be more opposite from Athena's carefully ordered rational brand. And yet she invented it? The contradiction is delicious. You trail her into her workshop. It smells like old parchment and burning olive oil. You see blueprints of siege towers, half-done weavings, mechanical owls in various states of disrepair. And in the middle of it all, a single stool. That's where she sits. You watch her unwrap the flute again. This time she adds a second reed. Double pipes. One for melody, one for drone. She places both in her mouth and blows. The result is Startling. Not bad. Not good. Just loud. Twin notes, shrill and reedy, collide like drunk birds. She flinches. So do you. Somewhere outside, a peacock screams in agreement. Still, she keeps going. The notes begin to form patterns, primitive, sure, but haunting. You can almost picture it. Soldiers marching in strange, hypnotic rhythm. Or maybe wild-eyed followers dancing in fields under moonlight. Feet pounding dust into legend. And that's when it hits you. Maybe this isn't a tool for war at all. Maybe it's for unmaking war. Athena pauses, and for a moment you see it in her eyes. The conflict. The goddess of battle, sitting here blowing spit through swamp reeds, like a teenager trying to impress a crush at band camp. It doesn't fit. She knows it doesn't fit. But that's the thing about new inventions. They don't ask permission. Now, here's your quirky tidbit. Some scholars think the ancient Greek word for the double flute, aulos, might not even refer to what we picture as a flute today. It was more like two oboe-like pipes stuck in your mouth, one in each cheek, which, to be honest, looks more like a dental emergency than divine inspiration. Still, Athena practices. Over and over she blows and adjusts and plays. Her fingers learn the spacing. Her breath finds a rhythm. You catch glimpses of something new blooming in the air. Not quite joy, but release. Like the exhale after a long battle you didn't know you were fighting. But this is Olympus, which means peace is temporary. Right on cue, Ares stomps in. Is that a weapon? He asks, already half lunging like he wants to punch it. No, Athena replies. Then what's the point? She doesn't answer. You want to slap him, but instead you watch. Ares squints at the flute, then at her puffed cheeks. He laughs. You don't like that laugh. But it's not just Ares. Within hours, word spreads. Aphrodite sees her practicing and whispers to Hera. Apollo hears the weird honking noises echoing from her chamber and raises an eyebrow so high it nearly takes flight. Even Hermes, usually too busy to care, stops mid-wing shoe polishing to mutter something sarcastic. The gods are judging, and you know how judgment works up here. It's all fun and games until someone immortal cries, I think. She pretends not to notice, but she plays less that night. You catch her standing at her window, the flute clutched in one hand, her jaw tight. The stars above Olympus seem to blink in time with her breath. Her owl perches silently on the sill, as if trying to decide whether this is one of those moments he should offer wisdom or just quietly yeet himself into the void. And here's your historians still argue moment. Some claim Athena invented the flute not out of creativity, but out of spite, as in she was jealous of Medusa's voice, or angry with the muses, or even trying to imitate the wild music of Dionysus's followers, just to prove she could do it better. The records aren't clear. Surprise! What is clear is that Athena made something new, something that scared the other gods, not because it was ugly, but because it didn't belong to their usual power games. It was too raw, too honest, and worst of all, it looked silly. You stand with her as the morning comes. The sun hits the golden dome of the Acropolis in the distance. She lifts the flute to her lips again, hesitates, and lowers it. Maybe it's not enough to invent something. Maybe you have to own it. And right now, You trail after Athena the next morning, past marble columns and perfumed courtyards, through the humming stillness of Olympus at dawn. The flute is hidden again, tucked beneath her cloak like a secret shame. Her footsteps are clipped, measured, as if she's trying to outwalk her own thoughts. She's not headed toward battle plans or the Library of Alexandria, which she totally ghostwrites for, by the way. No, this time she's headed to the far side of the mountain, where the wind sings to itself and mortals rarely reach. You arrive at a clearing. Quiet, raw open sky above. She pulls the flute free again, looks at it, turns it over, hesitates. Then, slowly, she lifts it to her lips and blows. And, nope, you wince. That wasn't a note, that was a duck getting divorced. She tries again, still no better. The rhythm is off, her breath uneven. Her cheeks puff out like bellows, red and strained. She looks, let's be honest, kind of ridiculous. Which is exactly when Hermes appears. Of course, he lands with a grin already on his face. Practicing your mating call, Athena. I didn't know you were into satyrs now. She doesn't respond. You do, though, at least internally, with a groan that would make the underworld quake. Hermes whistles, mocking her melody, note for note, badly, on purpose. And Athena, goddess of wisdom and grace, and never letting anything ruffle her, scowls. She scowls, but doesn't speak. Instead, she tries again. One note, then another, and another. And you feel it, a kind of ache. The tune is unfinished, sure, but it's reaching for something, longing. It climbs like ivy, twisting, failing, reaching again. But all Hermes sees is the cheeks. Oh gods, he snorts, you look like a fish. And that's it. You feel it before it happens, the energy shift. The way her fingers tense around the flute, the burn rising in her neck, Athena, furious. Not war goddess spear-wielding furious. No, this is worse. This is embarrassed furious. The kind where your pride starts turning on itself like a snake in a bucket. And here's your mainstream historical fact. In most myths, it's precisely this moment, when Athena sees herself playing the flute, that things fall apart. She catches her reflection in water, sees the cheeks, the puff, the posture, sees the humiliation, and throws the flute away. But you're not quite there yet. No water here, no reflection, just the words. Hermes drifts off eventually, wings flicking like he's bored now. But the damage is done. Athena stares at the flute in her hands, turns it again, brings it to her mouth, and lowers it. You hear her whisper something, a word in ancient tongue. Could be a curse, could be a farewell. Even you can't tell. Now for your quirky tidbit. One lesser-known version of the tale claims Athena never meant to play the flute herself. She only crafted it to gift to mortals, like Prometheus with fire, except without the liver-pecking punishment. In that telling, the flute was always meant for someone else's breath. Her own, just a test run. You're not sure what to believe, but what you do know is that Athena is not playing anymore. She wraps the instrument up, ties it tightly in cloth, and turns away from the clearing. You expect her to destroy it? She doesn't hurl it into the sea or offer it to the flames or gift it to Apollo with a passive-aggressive note attached. She just carries it, as if undecided, as if waiting. And here's your open scholarly debate. Some sources argue that Athena's disgust wasn't just about appearances. Some say she realized the flute's music inspired not strategy or discipline, but emotion, frenzy, even madness. And as the goddess of reason, that terrified her. Because what is music, really, if not an open invitation to feel? You follow her back through Olympus, past gardens where muses lounge, past fountains that sing themselves to sleep. No one mocks her this time, no one sees. But still, her face remains tight. She's thinking. And you're realizing something. For all her power, all her brilliance, Athena is still bound by something deeply human. Shame. Shame for trying something different, for risking vulnerability, for making art that doesn't fit inside her perfect, strategic box. It's painful to witness, not because it's dramatic, but because it's quiet. The kind of pain that hides in silence, that buries itself in cloth and locks itself away behind marble eyes. You return to her chamber. She places the flute gently on the stone table, stares at it, leaves the room, and for the first time, the workshop feels empty, even with the owl watching, even with you standing there. Because sometimes even goddesses retreat. You wake, or maybe you were never asleep, and you're already moving through the columns again, back into the heart of Olympus. The air feels different this morning, stiffer. You can sense it in the chatter of dryads perched on balcony ledges, in the low murmur of centaur messengers trying to pretend they weren't eavesdropping. Something's spreading. Word travels fast when it's coated in mockery. The flute, the cheeks, Athena's fish face, they're all anyone's talking about. At first, it's whispers. Polite, contained. But Olympus isn't known for restraint. It's more like a high school with thunderbolts. And as you glide between gods, demigods, nymphs, and those weird goat-legged interns that Dionysius keeps hiring, you hear the tone shift. You catch snippets. Did you see her jaw puff like a squid? Not her best invention. Maybe she should have stuck to owls. Did she think she could outdo Apollo with reeds? It's a full-on roast, and Athena, she's not even there to defend herself. Now, for your mainstream historical fact. In Greek art, Athena is nearly always portrayed as composed. Helmet straight, spear upright, never a wrinkle out of place. But the flute story disrupts that image. It's one of the rare tales where she's caught looking foolish, vulnerable, human. You round a corner and find her workshop door closed, locked. Which is weird, gods don't need locks, but it's symbolic. A quiet do not disturb from someone used to being above the noise. She's shut herself away, and you're left out here with the gossipers. Then, just when you think it can't get more petty, enter Apollo, god of music, sunlight, poetry, the arts, and cheekbones so sharp they could cut marble. He appears in the courtyard like he's grown from it. Robes flowing, lyre in hand, hair gleaming like it has its own lighting technician. You want to hate him. But annoyingly, he smells like citrus and triumph. I heard someone's trying to play music without strings, he says, loud enough for the muses to giggle. How adorable. He doesn't mention Athena by name. He doesn't have to. And here's your fringe tidbit. Apollo and Athena weren't enemies. In many myths, they actually got along well. But art? Art is competition, and no one steps into Apollo's realm without getting sinned. He plucks a few notes on his lyre just to make a point. The air actually shimmers. People swoon. A satyr faints into a bush. You want to yell. To remind them, Athena's music wasn't supposed to be performance. It was discovery, breathing, a moment of honesty in a world that demands masks. But no one listens. They're too busy laughing. And that's when Athena opens her door. Slowly, deliberately, she steps into the light, face unreadable. You can't tell if she's angry or composed or somewhere in between. The workshop behind her is silent. The flute is nowhere in sight. "Am I amusing you?" she asks. Her voice is quiet, which is somehow worse. Apollo smiles, unfazed, just curious. You're not usually the performative type. Athena studies him, then turns to the crowd. "I was experimenting." "Oh," Dionysus chimes in, drunk on both wine and drama. "Is that what they're calling it now?" More laughter. Even Hera raises an eyebrow. Athena takes it, takes all of it, doesn't flinch, doesn't retaliate, just nods once and walks away. Not defeated, not enraged, just done. And here's your scholarly debate. Some versions of the myth suggest this humiliation wasn't the reason she abandoned the flute. Instead, they claim she foresaw the effect it would have, that it would invite chaos, madness, and Athena, ever the planner, feared what would grow from it. Did she give it up out of shame or strategy? You follow her through a hallway lined with mosaics of her greatest victories: Gigantomachy, Arachne, the invention of the chariot, all the times she won. But none of them show her failing. None of them show her feeling. You reach a small private garden. A fig tree bends slightly as if bowing. A pool of water lies still at its center. Athena stands at the edge, silent. Then she kneels. And finally, for the first time, she looks. Her reflection stares back, calm, regal, but you can tell she sees the cheeks, the puff, the imperfection, the humanness. But she breathes, then speaks, to you maybe, or to herself. It was never for them. She stands, turns, walks away, and in the pool the wind stirs just enough to ripple her face into something unrecognizable. You follow the goddess down a corridor of cold, echoing silence. Her sandals make almost no sound on the stone, yet every step feels like thunder in your ears. She says nothing. You say nothing. But you both know where you're going. It's not far. Just a shaded corner of Olympus, tucked between the forge of Hephaestus and the edge of the garden, where nobody ever picks the apples because they're all cursed in one way or another. There, half forgotten, is a pool, not the kind mortals bathe in, or that Apollo poses beside like it's a modeling shoot for celestial calendars. No, this pool is still, black, cold, the kind of water that doesn't just reflect, it reveals. Athena kneels beside it, the flute in her hands again. You'd thought she left it behind. But she's been carrying it all along, hidden beneath her robes like a bandage she doesn't want anyone to see. The cloth is still wrapped tight, but her fingers move with purpose now, unbinding it, unwrapping each layer like an old wound. She stares at it. Then she stares at her own face in the water. And now you understand. This is the moment the myths freeze in amber, the still image captured across centuries. Athena, gazing down at her reflection, cheeks puffed wide from playing her invention. Not graceful, not wise, not warlike, just silly. You want to look away, give her privacy, but she doesn't. She plays slowly, one note, then another. It's not flawless, but it wants to be. There's something aching in it, like breath trying to find a body. Her cheeks puff, the flute wheezes, and in the dark water, her reflection mocks her. It laughs, not literally, of course, but you see it. Her eyes narrow, her lips tighten, the corners of her mouth twitch down. She hates what she sees. Now for your mainstream historical fact. In Ovid's Metamorphoses, Athena sees her reflection while playing the olos and becomes so disgusted with the distortion of her face, especially the inflating of her cheeks, that she throws the flute away, cursing it. But let's pause for a moment, because here's your quirky tidbit. The ancient Greeks were obsessed with ideal forms. Beauty wasn't just surface level, it was seen as a sign of harmony, of inner virtue. So when Athena, the embodiment of divine reason and poise, sees herself looking awkward, bloated, even silly, it isn't just vanity, it's existential. Her whole identity fractures for a second. She lowers the flute. Her fingers tremble, not from fear, from fury. This, she says, almost whispering, is not who I am. And the pool listens. It ripples slightly, as if recoiling. Right, here's where historians love to argue. Some say Athena's rejection of the flute had nothing to do with appearances, that this reflection story is a later addition, a Roman flourish to make her seem more womanly, more self-conscious. Others insist it was a metaphor, not about her cheeks, but about the distortion of control, that in playing the flute she surrendered to emotion, to chaos, to something she couldn't command. Either way, you feel the shift. She stands, holds the flute over the pool, and for a moment you think she'll just drop it. Let it sink. Let it vanish. But no, she doesn't throw it. She hurls it, not into the water, but into the forest beyond Olympus, where it arcs through sky like a comet, whistling one last unfinished note. Just like that, and she turns away. You follow her in stunned silence, because what else can you do? She doesn't cry. She doesn't scream. She just mutters, "Let the wild have it," and the words hang in the air like smoke. Here's what they don't tell you in the myths. This wasn't a tantrum. It was a choice. Deliberate. Cold. Athena didn't abandon the flute because it made her look bad. She abandoned it because it asked her to feel something she didn't want to feel. Lord, desire, longing, all the things that music brings out and reason suppresses. She tried to tame it. She couldn't. And so she walked away. You leave Olympus behind, for now. The wind carries that final note far down into the mortal world, where it will land not in the hands of a king or a hero, but in someone entirely unexpected. But we're not there yet. Tonight you sleep beside a goddess who would rather burn a creation than let it unmake her. And honestly, you understand. You leave Olympus now, not in disgrace. Don't worry. You haven't been kicked out for eavesdropping on divine drama. But the story is shifting, and Athena's flute is no longer welcome in the clouds. It spins as it falls, reeds whistling faintly in the upper air. You descend alongside it, down past wisps of cloud and blinking stars, through the thinner breath of the mortal world, until you land, softly, almost reverently, on the craggy soil of Phrygia. That's right, you've arrived in what today we'd call Central Turkey, though no one's calling it that yet. You're in a land of steep hills, echoing canyons, and shepherds with too much time to think. A place where music grows in the gaps between rocks, and stories travel faster than horses. And there it is, the flute. It lands beside a stream in a shallow valley, cushioned by reeds not unlike the ones it was born from. Its cloth wrappings have come loose in the fall, and it lies naked in the mud, hollow, forgotten, patient. For days nothing touches it. Birds hop past, a goat sniffs it. Rain slicks its surface, still it waits. Then one morning a boy finds it, not a prince, not a soldier, not a prodigy, just a shepherd, young, gangly, covered in goat fur and attitude. His name? Marsyas. Yes, that Marsyas. Now, before we get to the whole divine punishment angle, and we will, take a moment to appreciate how absurdly normal this beginning is. A kid finds a stick. It makes a funny sound. He laughs. He tries it again. And just like that, the world changes. Here's your mainstream historical fact. Marsyas is often described in myths as a satyr, a creature part man, part goat, fond of wine, dancing, and questionable decisions. But early versions make him fully human, a mortal musician who simply got too bold. You watch as Marsyas brings the flute to his lips and blows. It squeals. He sputters. A goat startles and headbutts a tree. He tries again, and soon, somehow, the tune begins to form. It's rough, wild, nothing like the methodical breath patterns Athena used. But there's soul in it, rhythm, emotion. His fingers dance across the holes, not with discipline but instinct. You can practically see the music spilling out of him, unfiltered and gleeful. And here's your quirky tidbit. Some lesser-known regional myths claim Marsyas didn't find the flute alone. He was led to it in a dream by a whispering voice in the reeds. Some say it was the spirit of the instrument itself, longing to be played again. Others think it was Athena in disguise, watching from afar to see what would happen next. You can't prove either theory, but you do notice something. When Marsyas plays, the wind answers. Not like before, not Olympus, whisper polite. This is real wind, rough and tumble, like it's dancing with him, not around him. He plays and it howls back. He trills and it whips through the trees. It's no longer a goddess's breath guiding the song. It's his. And this is where things start to tangle, because word spreads, not through prophecy or divine messenger pigeons or whatever Hermes is charging per message these days. No, this story moves the old way, through echoes. People start to hear the music. First, other shepherds, then wandering traders, then villagers passing by. And each time someone hears it, they stop. Their eyes widen. They feel something stir in them that no lyre or harp ever coaxed out. It's not beauty, it's freedom. Raw, breathy, almost indecent. And that's the problem. Because back on Olympus, someone hears it too. Not Athena. She's done with all this. Or so she tells herself. No, the one who notices is Apollo, god of music, perfection, harmony. And suddenly, there's a new sound rising in his realm, one he didn't invent, one that doesn't care about symmetry or scales, one that's gaining an audience. Now, for your historians still argue a moment. Scholars debate whether the flute Athena made is the same one Marsyas plays. Some say he merely invented his own version. Others claim it passed through multiple hands before his. But most classical sources agree, whatever he plays, it challenges Apollo. And that makes it dangerous. You sit with Marsyas that night. The campfire flickers. Goats bleat. The stars overhead twinkle, unknowing or maybe pretending not to see. He leans back, lifts the flute again, and plays a low pulsing note that feels like the start of a heartbeat. He doesn't know it yet, but he's about to walk into a contest. And on the other side of it, well, let's just say Olympus has a very specific definition of losing gracefully. You wake to the sound of reeds rustling and a whispering wind like gossip behind a door that was never really shut. You're still in Phrygia, still beside Marsyas's fire, and the flute, Athena's flute, is still tucked beneath his arm like it's always belonged there. Except now, the music is no longer just music. It's talking. Not in words, of course. Not in the way Hermes might whisper a joke or Apollo might charm a court. No, this talking is stranger, older, woven into the air itself. You hear it when Marsyas plays near the riverbanks. The reeds bend toward him, not with the wind, but against it, leaning in like they're listening, or maybe remembering, because here's the twist nobody saw coming. The reeds know the flute, they're the flute. It came from them, and now that it's back, they have stories to tell. Let's start with a mainstream historical fact. The Greeks believed in natural echoes of divine events, places and objects that remembered godly encounters. Sacred springs, oracular trees, whispering caves, and yes, talking reeds. And these reeds, they remember Athena. They remember the breath that once passed through their sister stalks. They remember the way she sliced and shaped and played and then, so suddenly, rejected. And they're not happy about it. Which brings us to a quirky little side story. There's an ancient tale, not widely told, about Midas's barber. Yes, that King Midas. According to the myth, Midas had donkey ears, long story, and only his barber knew the secret. But the barber couldn't keep it in, so he dug a hole in the earth, whispered, "King Midas has ass's ears," into it and covered it back up. Months later, reeds grew from that spot, and when the wind blew through them, they repeated the secret. Loudly, "King Midas has ass's ears." Went over across the fields. Now, here's the part the myths don't emphasize enough. Those same gossiping reeds, they grew not far from where Marsyas is now. Same soil, same wind, same instinct to tell. So what do you think happens when the wind catches hold of Marsyas's flute? That's right, it remembers Athena's breath. It remembers everything, and it begins to whisper. At first, Marsyas doesn't notice. He just plays. His fingers nimble, his grin wide, the music wild and ecstatic. But the villagers who gather to listen, they do notice. They start hearing things. Voice, not lyrics exactly, just feelings. Echoes, fragments of something older than speech. Some claim they hear a woman's voice murmuring instructions in an ancient dialect no one's spoken for centuries. Others swear the wind through the flute cries like a wounded owl. One old man says the song makes him remember the face of his mother, though he hadn't seen her since he was a child. It's not normal music, it's a confession. And whether Marsyas knows it or not, he's channeling more than his own lungs. The instrument is remembering itself. And here's where the reeds come in. They start to, not when he plays, not when there's an audience, only when he's alone. You watch as Marsyas sits by the river one evening, the flute across his knees, his brow furrowed. The reeds are still, but there's a faint hum, like bees inside bamboo. He leans closer, and they whisper. He jerks back, startled, not because they're speaking, but because he understands. It's not words, not really. It's more like instinct, a feeling, planted in his chest like a thorn. The flute was not meant for him. The flute remembers rejection, abandonment, shame, and it's looking for someone to listen. You see it in Marsyas's eyes, the slow realization that the power he's been playing with isn't just music, it's memory. Someone else's, a goddess's. Now for your historians still argue moment. Some scholars believe the Marsyas myth is really about the tension between two kinds of music, structured versus emotional, composed versus chaotic. Apollo's lyre represented order, Marsyas' flute, expression, passion, grief, rebellion. Athena's invention through Marsyas had become a vessel for everything Olympus wanted to suppress. And the reeds, they're broadcasting that rebellion to everyone who'll listen. You travel with Marsyas into town. People now expect him. Some call him the wind whisperer. Others, the wild piper. He plays in markets, at weddings, once for a group of soldiers before battle, and they win, singing his tune as they charge. But always, in the background, the reeds, whispering, revealing, budding, until finally the rumors reach the wrong ears. Apollo hears them. He hears about the boy with the flute who makes grown men cry. Who doesn't use strings? Who doesn't read music? Who doesn't bow? And worst of all, he hears people saying the boy might be better. That's when things shift. Because on Olympus, you can break laws. You can seduce swans. You can even curse entire bloodlines. But you do not one-up a god without consequences. Especially not Apollo, and especially not with a goddess's discarded invention. But you already knew this was coming, didn't you? You felt it building in the air, like a storm behind the hills, because music isn't just sound, it's challenge. And Marsyas, he's just accepted one he doesn't fully understand. You find yourself back in the hills, but the air is different now. Tense, still, like a breath held too long. Even the goats are quiet. Marsyas stands atop a rocky outcrop, flute in hand, eyes fixed on the horizon where the sun gleams too perfectly for comfort. He's been summoned, or challenged? Maybe both. The messenger had arrived that morning, a young boy, golden-touched and stuttering, clearly out of his depth. "Apollo wants a contest," he'd said. "Public, formal, music against music." Marsyas? He laughed. Not because he didn't take it seriously, but because, well, who wouldn't want to hear their own name in the same sentence as a god? You might be thinking, surely he didn't actually think he could win. But that's where you'd be wrong. Because Marsyas wasn't playing to win. He was playing to speak. Here's your mainstream historical fact. The myth of Marsyas and Apollo was one of the most enduring cautionary tales in ancient Greece. Depictions of their musical contest appear on pottery, reliefs, and temple walls across the Mediterranean. And it always ends the same way. But let's not skip ahead just yet. You join the crowd gathering in the forest glade. It's a natural amphitheater, ringed by cypress and olive trees, birds perched in the branches like an accidental chorus. Gods and mortals mingle here, which is rare and dangerous. The rules of Olympus don't usually bend this far, but Apollo wants an audience. He wants them to see. Marsyas arrives barefoot, with dirt on his tunic and his flute tied to his belt with a fraying vine. There's no lyre, no sacred robe, no laurels in his hair. Just a boy and a breath and a reed pipe shaped by a goddess who no longer claims it. Apollo floats down not long after, resplendent in white and gold, his lyre cradled like a lover, every strand of hair in perfect mythological defiance of gravity. "Do you know what you're doing?" Apollo asks with a smile that could slice marble. Marsyas shrugs. "I'm playing music, and that's how it begins." The rules are simple. Each musician plays, round by round. The muses will judge. Yes, those muses, 9 daughters of Zeus, who basically invented the Yelp review. Marsyas goes first. He plays the forest, not just in the forest, bucoante, but his flute weaves the wind through leaves, the hum of bees, the heartbeat of the earth beneath bare feet. It's not clean, it's not polished, but it moves. People shift, sigh. One woman begins to cry, and Apollo plays next. And oh, it's flawless. Each note from his lyre sparkles. Perfect intervals, chords so divine you can almost see the math hovering behind them like glowing runes. Birds pause mid-flight to listen. Flowers bloom. Someone's bad knee heals on the spot. Probably. You know what this is. Order, structure, perfection. And yet, Marsyas plays again. This time it's memory. You feel the longing of forgotten fathers, the laughter of little sisters lost to time, the slow ache of a wound that hasn't bled in years. No technique, just truth. And the crowd, even the gods, lean in. Here's your quirky tidbit. Some Roman sources claim that Marsyas played so well during one round, Apollo's hand slipped, just for a second. A single sour note, quickly covered, but enough to be noticed by one muse, Polyhymnia, the usually silent one. She never confirmed it, but she never denied it either. Now here comes the twist. Apollo smiles and says, "Let's make it fair. You feel the trap before Marsyas does. Let's play upside down," Apollo adds, "with our instruments behind our backs, mouths shut." Everyone laughs, except Marsyas, because he realizes what's just happened. Apollo can still pluck strings, blind, But a flute? You need breath. You need lips. It's not just unfair, it's impossible. And here's your historians still argue phrase. Some say this rule change was never part of the original story, that it was added later by poets eager to underline Apollo's cruelty. Others argue it was the key to the entire myth, the moment the gods stopped playing music and started playing politics. Either way, Messias agrees. Because of course he does. Because what else can he do? You watch as he lifts the flute behind his back, fumbling. He tries. You feel his breath quicken. The first note cracks. The second vanishes before it's born. He stops. And that's it. Apollo plays one final time, something celestial, so beautiful it feels sterile. You hear no grief, no memory, just precision. The muses clap. The crowd murmurs. And Marsyas? He lowers his hand and bows, not to Apollo, to the audience, to you, because he knows this wasn't about winning. It was about saying something no god wanted to hear. And somewhere, you think you hear the reeds whisper again. They don't sound like they're finished. The glade empties slowly. At first, there's applause. Uneasy, polite, forced. Then people begin to drift away, mortals muttering to themselves, gods glancing at one another, unsure whether what they just witnessed was a triumph or a trap. Apollo remains still, basking in the afterglow of perfection. His fingers gently stroke the strings of his lyre, coaxing out a few smug, descending arpeggios, like a cat licking its paws after knocking over a vase. Marcius, meanwhile, stands alone, no flute in hand, no sound. You sit beside him, though he can't see you. His shoulders rise and fall with shallow breaths. It's not shame you see in him. He doesn't regret playing. It's something stranger, something like resolve, because he knows. This wasn't the end of the song. It was the beginning of the echo. Let's bring in your mainstream historical fact now. The contest between Marsyas and Apollo always ends the same way in myth. Apollo, victorious, punishes Marsyas with flaying, removing his skin in a brutal act meant to warn anyone who dare compare their talents to the gods. It was one of the most famous cautionary tales of hubris in antiquity. Every child knew it, every artist feared it. But you're here before that happens. You're watching the pause, the breath between the note and the consequence. Marcius begins to walk. He doesn't run. He's not that kind of fool. He knows what's coming. He just wants to choose where it happens, not in front of the muses, not with the laughter of gods fresh in the air. He wants the forest, so you follow him. It's dusk by the time you reach the old tree, the one that leans a little too far, the one with bark like wrinkled bronze and roots coiling like sleeping serpents. He sits at its base and waits. The flute, you notice, has reappeared in his lap. He must have picked it up when no one was looking. He lifts it to his lips, not to play, just to breathe, just to remember. And that's when Apollo arrives. He doesn't descend in light this time. No glowing entrance, no musical fanfare. He just walks, barefoot, silent, lyre slung over his back, not even bothering to tune it. He stops a few feet away. "Why did you accept?" he asks, genuinely curious. Marsyas doesn't answer, so Apollo crouches beside him, tilting his head like a hawk before the strike. "You knew you'd lose. I wasn't playing to win. Marsyas says, and you realize it's the first time he's spoken aloud since the contest. Apollo doesn't blink. Then why? Marsyas meets his gaze. To be heard. The silence that follows is thick, heavy, sacred. Now here's your quirky tidbit. In some fringe versions of the myth, Apollo doesn't flay Marsyas out of wrath. He does it out of fascination. He wants to know how such music came from mortal flesh, as if the skin itself had trapped something divine. It's creepy. It's poetic. It's very Olympus. Which brings us to the scholarly debate. Was the punishment symbolic, a stripping of arrogance, a metaphor for what the gods do to mortals who reach too high? Or was it something deeper, Apollo trying to understand an instrument of chaos by tearing it apart? Back at the tree Apollo stands. No ceremony, no decree, just motion. He reaches for Marsyas, and Marsyas doesn't resist. You want to stop it. You want to yell at Athena, wherever she's sulking, to do something. This is her invention, her flute, her music. But she's not here. And that silence, it speaks volumes. The sun dips below the trees. The first cut is silent. You don't see the whole thing. The story doesn't want you to. It blurs around the edges, softening the horror into metaphor. You see shadows, hear a note held too long, feel the wind stop breathing. And then it's done. Marsyas lies still beneath the tree, no blood, no body, just skin, stretched between two branches, fluttering in the wind like the world's saddest flag. But look closer. The flute is still there, unbroken, and in the quiet it plays itself. Just one breath, just one note, low, mournful, defiant. You don't need to be a god to understand it. You just need to listen, because that sound, that's not the end. That's the beginning of a legend. You return to Olympus now, though part of you doesn't want to. Not after what happened beneath that tree. Not after the flute played itself. But something calls you upward. Maybe curiosity. Maybe unfinished business. Maybe the echo of Marsyas's final note. Olympus feels colder. Not in temperature, but in mood. As though the mountain itself disapproves, but has no mouth to say so. Gods walk a little more stiffly today. Conversations pause when you get close. No one's talking about what happened, but everyone knows. And Athena, she knows too. You find her at the edge of a balcony overlooking the mortal world, her face carved from something harder than stone. She hasn't spoken since the contest. Not publicly, not privately. She's kept to herself. No weaving, no counsels, no invention. Just stillness. She saw what Apollo did, of course she did. But she doesn't ask why. She already knows the answer. It was about control. That flute was her creation, crafted from breath, not order. And now that breath has been punished. Here's your mainstream historical fact. After Marsyas's death, the myth tells us the river Marsyas was formed where his blood flowed, his name given to the waters that still run through Phrygia today. It became a place of mourning, of remembrance. Even some of Apollo's followers avoided it. But what's more fascinating is what happened after. You see, music didn't stop with Marsyas. It changed. Across the mortal world, flutes began to appear more often, in rituals, in public ceremonies, in mourning rites. Not just for joy or dance, but for grief. And you know why, don't you? because when the gods tried to silence a sound, the mortals remembered it and kept playing. You find Athena standing over a temple in Thebes. Below you can hear the faint strains of a flute, a girl practicing, her notes shaky but earnest. She's not playing for praise. She's not even playing well. She's just playing because it feels good, because it lets something out that she didn't know how to name. And Athena, she listens. She doesn't smile, but she doesn't turn away either. Now here's your quirky tidbit. In certain regions, temple priests of Athena did allow flute music, especially during funerary rites or after harvests. It was considered a kind of cleansing, a way to air out the soul. Even in places where the goddess had supposedly cursed the instrument, its tone lingered. You lean closer to her, though she can't feel you. Did you know, you ask? She doesn't answer, because of course she did. She knew exactly what that instrument could do. But what she hadn't known, what none of them had, was how deeply it would burrow into human hearts, how it would survive mockery, shame, even divine punishment. She turns from the balcony and walks down one of Olympus's rarely used paths. You follow, uncertain where she's going. She leads you to a grove, not marshland. This is older, quieter. No war banners here, no statues, just cypress trees and the whisper of long-forgotten leaves. At the center is an altar, small, simple. Atop it, laid with reverence, is a bundle of reeds. Not her flute, but someone's. A tribute. She kneels. You feel the shift in her shoulders, the breath caught in her chest, the ache of memory. And here's your historians still argue moment. Some believe that after Marsyas's death, Athene returned to the world in secret, disguised, humbled, that she wandered temples and groves, listening to music played in her name, deciding whether the flute's breath had a place after all. Others say she never returned, that the guilt hardened her, that the flute was her one and only mistake. You sit beside her now in silence, and you see it clearly. This wasn't about music. It was about vulnerability. Athena built the flute to explore something she couldn't name, then cast it aside when it asked too much of her. But it didn't die. It found another mouth, another voice, and now it lives in every note mortals dare to play without permission. The wind picks up slightly, rustling the reeds on the altar. One of them hums, softly, almost like a sigh. You watch her close her eyes, and though she doesn't say it, you know what she's thinking. Maybe the flute wasn't a mistake. Maybe it was the only honest thing she ever made. You drift now, not in body, but in story. Somewhere far from Olympus, away from the cold groves and high altars, a boy walks through a dusty town square, flute in hand. It's not Marsyas. It's not even a name you'd remember. Just another mortal, another breath. But when he plays, you recognize it, the note, the ache, the flame that doesn't burn but smolders just beneath the ribcage, a song born from memory, not melody, and it's traveling again. Back in the sky, you catch a shimmer. Athena stands in a cloud-wreathed corridor, her eyes not fixed on Olympus, but turned downward, toward that boy, toward the mortals who keep playing the thing she abandoned. You sense her tension. Her silence isn't indifference, it's conflict. She's watching the spread of something she once created and disowned. And now, she doesn't know what to feel. She moves through Olympus like a ghost. Gods still whisper. Some avoid her entirely. Others, like Hermes, glance her way with that look. You know the one. So we're not talking about it? Look, she ignores them. But at night, when she thinks no one watches, she walks alone and listens. Here's your mainstream historical fact. Athena was not only the goddess of war and wisdom, but also patron of crafts, especially weaving. Myths often frame her as the weaver of fates and destinies, threads and stories. And yet, in this tale, the thread slipped from her fingers. So what does a goddess do when she's lost control of her own invention? Some say she forgets it. But you know better. You follow her down a path through mortal cities. Not physically, gods don't walk streets like beggars, but in other forms, in thoughts, in disguise. And maybe, just maybe, that's what she's doing now. The old woman in the corner, spinning thread by firelight, humming a tune that no one taught her. The quiet traveler who trades reeds for bread and vanishes before dawn. The teacher who insists the children learn breath control before reading. All maybe her. Here's your fringe tidbit. In certain rural Greek communities, there were whispered tales of a veiled woman who appeared in times of sorrow. She didn't speak, didn't offer prophecy. She simply handed over a small flute made of strange reeds and walked away. These stories never called her Athena, but the timing, the dignity, the sense of watching, suspicious to say the least. You sit now in a small village shrine. A woman kneels, laying olive branches at the base of an old cracked statue. Not of Athena, though it might once have been. The features have softened, faded. But the eyes, those still carry her weight. And in the quiet, a child plays a flute. It's clumsy, endearing. The notes rise and fall with more effort than grace. But the feeling, oh, the feeling. It pours out like a story that's waited too long to be told. Athena appears in the doorway. No fanfare, no flash. She just stands there watching. The child sees her and stops. She doesn't speak, just lifts one hand, the smallest gesture of permission. Keep going, and the child does. Here's your historians still argue moment. Some claim Athena regretted abandoning the flute the moment she cast it away, but pride kept her from reclaiming it. Others insist she let it go on purpose, knowing it needed a voice beyond her own. A mortal voice, one that wouldn't be constrained by divinity. You return now to the marshlands where it all began. The reeds are older, taller. They sway not with secrets now, but with stories. Generations of breath have passed through them. They remember everything. You kneel beside them. You blow gently into one hollow stalk, and it hums back. A note, a memory, a promise. Athena walks past, distant but present. She doesn't stop, she doesn't speak, but she places something at the base of the reed bed. A small carving, of her face, puffed cheeks, eyes closed. Where's me peaceful? Maybe, just maybe, forgiven. You wake to morning. Not yours, not yet, but the world's. The wind is weeping. The olive branches droop like tired eyelids. Somewhere in a mountain village, a widow holds her late husband's cloak and hums a tune you recognize. It's the same tune the girl played at the shrine. The same tune Marsyas once coaxed from Athena's reed invention. The same aching thread that refuses to break. It's everywhere now. You travel from region to region, guided by the notes themselves. Each town has someone, a player, a hummer, a whistler. Some call it the shepherd's breath, others just the sad tune. They don't know where it came from, but they know what it does. It heals, not wounds. Not in the Apollo sense. This isn't golden warmth or magical restoration. It's slower, heavier, the kind of healing that happens after the crying stops. In a temple built into the side of a cliff, a priestess lights incense before a cracked idol of Athena. There's no official doctrine here, no ritual fluting, but you hear it anyway. From behind the sanctuary, a young man plays quietly, as if unsure whether he's allowed. The melody is rough, but sincere. And Athena? She's listening again. You see her, not in flesh, not as a vision, but as presence. Her awareness pools like water behind the altar, heavy and watching. She doesn't stop the music. She doesn't leave either. And here's your mainstream historical fact. Flute music became essential in various Greek rites, especially funerals. Unlike the lyre, which represented balance and harmony, the flute came to symbolize emotion, pathos, and mourning. It slipped out of elite halls and into everyday grief. Even in Athens, even in temples that bore her name, isn't that something? Her invention, banned by its maker, now pipes its way through her most sacred spaces. Here's your quirky tidbit. There's evidence that Greek flute players, called auletai, were sometimes considered a little too emotional, not just musicians, but channels, conduits for moods and spirits. Some were believed to enter trance-like states when they played, losing themselves to the breath. You hear that now in a girl along the coast. She plays as her brother is lowered into the ground. No priest speaks, no prayers are said, just her, just the song. And you realize the flute doesn't only mourn the dead. He comforts the living. You move through time like breath now. Villages fade, kingdoms rise. The notes change, stretch, warp, but the feeling remains. Even when the instrument shifts form, panpipes, single flutes, double reeds, bone-whittled whistles, it remembers. You hear echoes of Athena in all of them. Not her voice, but her absence. Her intention, if not her name. In one valley, the players wear masks. They call the music sacred. They don't know who built the first reed, but they feel her in the silence between breaths. You arrive now in a mountain shrine, nearly forgotten. Its roof caved in, vines grown over the entrance, no priests, no pilgrims, only birds nesting in corners and lizards blinking in the heat. And yet, in the back, on a stone shelf long darkened by soot, lies a single artifact. Not gold, not precious, just two hollow reeds bound together with faded sinew. You blow softly, and the air shivers. That old sound, that marsh-born hum, still alive. Here's your historians still argue line. Did Athena know the flute would survive her? Was her rejection a warning or a gift? Some believe she designed it for mortals precisely because she couldn't bear to keep it. Others argue she had no idea how deeply it would take root, that it evolved in spite of her. You turn from the shrine and find someone waiting A child, wide-eyed, curious, you hand them the flute. You don't speak. You don't need to, because some stories are breathed, not told. And this one, it plays itself. You stand once again at the edge of the world. Not the real edge, but one of those quiet places where sky meets stone and stories pause just long enough to catch their breath. Behind you lies everything the flute has passed through: Athena, Olympus, Marsyas, forests, flayings, mourning, rituals. But ahead, a question: did she ever return? That's what you're chasing now. Not a memory, not a melody, but a possibility. You descend from mountaintops to temples, from temples to markets, from markets to crossroads where strangers pause to share a song before moving on. You see the fingerprints of something divine, but never the face. And you begin to wonder, did she come back? Did Athena ever walk among mortals again? Let's start with your mainstream historical fact. In classical Athens, flute players, especially female ones, were common at symposia and festivals. They were called alutrides. Some were enslaved, others hired professionals, but many carried themselves with unusual dignity and restraint. Rumors swirled, whispers of a silent woman who played not for coin or crowd, but for meaning. You see one of them now, a veiled figure at the back of a spring festival. Not dancing, not singing, just sitting quietly with a pair of double reeds in her lap. She doesn't play for attention. She plays like someone testing a memory. You watch children draw closer, enchanted. One claps, another sways. The crowd doesn't erupt. It hushes. It listens. And for the first time in days, there's no laughter, just breath. And isn't that how it always begins? Here's your quirky tidbit. There was once a mystery cult in Epirus that believed in the divine return of forgotten gods. Not in glory, not with lightning, but in fragments. A stranger's dream, a tune overheard, a shadow that smells like home. They claimed Athena would return not in armor, but in humility. If that's true, maybe she already has. You follow a rumor to a windswept island where a teacher lives who never speaks, but instructs young girls how to shape reeds into flutes. She wears a linen cap, keeps to herself, and smiles rarely, but when she places the flute to her lips, even the goats stop to listen. "Is it her?" a villager whispers once. The old woman never answers, but when she dies, never stop. Years later, they find a single olive wood owl carved into her floorboards. No signature, no altar, just a mark. A message? You don't know. Here's your historians still argue phrase. Some believe the goddess of wisdom never left the mortal world entirely, that after abandoning the flute, she split. Part remained in Olympus, stoic, armored, unchanged. The other walked the earth, bare-handed and silent, bearing witness to what breath could build. In that second Athena, she didn't command. She listened. That's what you feel now, isn't it? Not divinity, but presence. You kneel beside a well where women hum lullabies. You lean into a doorway where a widow blows a single note on a bone flute as she cooks. You sit at the back of a theater where a street performer plays a tune that breaks your heart in two, though he's never had a lesson in his life. You know she's been here. She's everywhere the breath lingers longer than it should. You reach one last town, Nothing remarkable about it, no statues, no altars, just a long dirt road and a schoolhouse with uneven shutters. A child sits out front, legs crossed, flute in hand. She plays not for an audience, not even for herself. She plays like someone who remembers. You glance around. There's no goddess here, just a grandmother in a rocking chair, shelling beans. A dog scratching its ear. This cloud drifting past the sun. But still, that note, that shape, that ache. You're not meant to find Athena. Not directly. Because the truth is, she was never a woman in armor. Not really. She was an idea. A breath made solid. A choice to speak softly when louder voices ruled the room. And when she walked away from that flute, she let the world decide what to do with it. Spoiler alert, we kept playing. You follow the wind now, because that's all that's left. No more temples, no more statues, no final revelations carved in marble or etched on scrolls. Just the steady breath of the earth, moving through fields, through reeds, through mouths that don't even know they're echoing something ancient. It's been centuries. The stories have softened. People remember Marsyas as a cautionary tale, if they remember him at all, the goddess who once invented the flute. She's become a footnote in her own legend, a shrug in myth books. Oh, right. Didn't Athena do something with a flute once? But the wind hasn't forgotten. It still moves the way she did. Sharp, searching, restless. And sometimes, when the hills are quiet and the dusk is long, you swear you hear her notes riding it. But now there's something strange happening. The melodies are changing. You find yourself in a village where children dare one another to play in a certain grove. The air there is always cool, even in summer. The trees whisper, the birds won't sing. But the reeds, they do. When someone blows through them, they don't hum gently, they screech, wail, groan with a dissonance that's not music, but memory. It's not just mourning anymore, it's rage. The flute, it seems, has evolved again, and this time it's not asking to be heard, it's demanding it. Binary history. Here's your mainstream historical fact. By the later classical period, the aliolos, Athena's original double flute, was increasingly associated with irrational states, madness, ecstasy, fury. Unlike the lyre, which retained its noble image, the alios became the instrument of extremes. It was banned from some religious ceremonies and scorned by certain philosophers, including Plato, who believed it stirred the emotions too dangerously. It makes you wonder, doesn't it? Was that the plan all along? Or did the flute twist itself into something new just to survive? Here's your quirky tidbit. In Thrace, there were rumors of a cursed grove where flutes played without hands. The reeds would whistle on their own, full phrases in the night air. Locals said it was haunted, that Marsyas's skin had turned to bark and his breath still moved through the roots. You walk that grove now, the wind doesn't whistle, it hisses. You try to speak, but your own voice sounds wrong here. You pick up a fallen reed. It's split, scarred, old. But when you lift it to your lips and blow, it sings, close, a low, furious note, heavy with something like pain or prophecy. This is no longer Athena's instrument of inquiry. It's a relic, a revenant. It remembers the laughter, the flaying, the shame. It remembers Olympus turning its back and the mortals carrying on without permission. It remembers every time someone told a child not to play, and the child played anyway. Now it waits. Not for a god, not even for a hero, just someone brave enough to play without knowing the rules. Here's your historians still argue phrase, was the flute cursed or liberated? Some scholars claim Athena's abandonment left it vulnerable to darker influences. Others believe that her absence made it stronger, that in being rejected it became pure. Unshaped by divine pride, freed from perfection, you return to a familiar hill. It's late. The stars are bright and soft. Athena once stood here, flute in hand, cheeks puffed, alone. She doesn't return tonight, but the wind does, and it carries the sound of 1,000 mortals playing in her place. Some mourn, some rejoice, some scream into it like it's the only voice they'll ever have. And the flute, it lets them. No judgment, no gods, just breath. You're back where it started. Not exactly the same marsh, but close enough that your feet sink a little into the wet ground. The reeds are tall, wiser now, bent from years of wind and story. You walk among them like someone returning to a childhood home that's been left to grow wild. It's quiet, but not empty, because the wind still plays here, still breathes, still hums through the reeds in tones that sound eerily like memory. You stand where Athena first heard it, the whisper of air curling through hollow stalks, a music no one had asked for, a breath no one had claimed. That moment when inspiration wasn't a lightning bolt or a war cry, but a quiet realization that this simple sound was something new, and maybe something dangerous. You trace her steps, imagine her crouching here, imagine her fingers selecting the reeds, imagine her face, sharp, intelligent, unknowingly vulnerable, as she blew her first note. You imagine the weight of the flute in her hands, the hope it held, the foam and the fear. You kneel in the same mud, pick 2 reeds, bind them loosely with a strand of bark. They're not symmetrical, not polished, but neither was hers. You bring them to your lips, and for a second, there's nothing, just wind. Then a single note escapes, thin, raw, untrained. It is ugly, but honest, and the marsh listens. The reeds sway, the water murmurs, the sound spreads like it always has, without permission, without instruction, without shame. Here's your final mainstream historical fact: the flute. Athena's flute, Marsyas's flute, outlived the gods who made and mocked it. As myths crumbled, empires fell, and temples turned to dust, the instrument carried on, not in marble, not in scrolls, in breath. Here's your final quirky tidbit. Some folk traditions in the Balkans still feature flute-like instruments made of marsh reeds, played at night, always solo. The musicians say the songs just arrive. They don't know where they come from, they only know when it's time to play. And the final historians still argue moment? Well, this one's about you. They debate whether the story of Athena's flute is a tragedy or a triumph. Was it a tale of rejection, of fear, of invention turned to regret? Or was it a gift, a flawed, imperfect gift that changed music forever by leaving the gods behind? You sit now with the flute in your lap, and you know the answer was never about perfection, never about applause. It was about breath, the thing you carry, whether you're a goddess or a goat herder, whether you speak or stay silent, whether you win or lose. The flute was never abandoned. It was freed, and now it's yours. So you set the flute down beside you. The reeds keep swaying, but slower now. You lie back in the soft, damp grass, eyes watching the stars press their slow-motion blinks across the sky. There's no need to speak, no more music to chase. You've heard enough for tonight. Somewhere nearby, a bird calls once. The wind has lost its edge. It hums now, gently curling around your ankles, brushing your skin like the soft folds of a blanket being pulled up. And the story? It settles. Not with a bang, not with a lesson, just with breath. Slow, even, enough to carry you towards sleep. Athena never picked up the flute again. But she didn't need to. She'd already done the most powerful thing a god could do, if she let it go. So the next time you hear a strange tune in the wind, or see a child playing a melody that no one taught them, maybe don't dismiss it. Maybe that's where she lives now. Not in the armor, not in the strategy, but in every breath you dare to give a voice. Close your eyes. The story will wait. Let the wind carry you now, soft and slow. Let it cradle your thoughts, like reeds swaying at the edge of a forgotten marsh. Let the world go quiet and breathe